Thank you for being part of my vlog. I haven't been able to put anything out in the recent few weeks because I've been busy with my film's post-production work, but I realized that this incident is something that warrants some form of discussion for a wider audience to get a sense of what's going on. Because most of in both our countries, most of the stuff that happened to women end up being a very local information or a local news, barely even crosses the next state, let alone the next country or the whole world. So, without missing a beat, why don't you just tell us about this motorway horror story?
Right. So I think this is a few days ago, last week to be precise. And there was a woman who's traveling alone late at night with two or three of her kids. And her car breaks down or she runs out of fuel, either or. And she calls for help. She makes a distress call, and somebody acknowledges it, and they're like, okay, we'll send help. But then what happens is the two guys, they um, probably they spot this car, and then the car is locked, so she has her windows up and it's locked from the inside. But then they break the windows, and earlier they were planning to loot her, but then they probably saw an unfortunate opportunity, and then they drag her and her kids to away from the main highway and towards the fields in the corner. And yeah, so they rape the woman in front of her kids. And so that is something that, I mean, kind of jolted the entire nation. Because yes, we do have rape incidents and occurrences happening almost, every day, every other day, if not every day. And, these incidences have become so common that, when we hear them in the news, like we've become insensitive, sort of. I mean, and it's hard to admit it that, okay, we will be like, oh, that's really sad. And that's it. Then you move on. That's how things have become now, with such rampant occurrences of a crime as heinous as this. And usually we hear about, this happening to young girls, minors, adult women. But why this kind of created more serious ripples throughout the nation was because children were involved and they were the witnesses. So, and so obviously that kind of opened up a lot of other, it kind of opened a can of worms, I would say, in the sense that it was very disturbing to just listen to this account. And protests happened across the nation, and a lot of voices came forward that we needed to strengthen our law enforcement. We need to overhaul the criminal justice system, and there's so much that needs to be done. Like the government is all talks and barely any action. So the citizens took it upon themselves to make that noise, to get them to act, and walk the talk, basically.
Right. From my understanding of reading some of the news articles and everything, the criminal justice system's natural starting point was to blame the woman for having taken that route. That it is somehow a brand new allotted route and that there is no protection. Therefore, she should have been a bit more careful in not choosing that, or she should have checked how much fuel there is in her vehicle before setting out and things like that. The first opportunity that anybody gets when it is an incident concerning a woman of a sexual violent nature, why is it, do you think, that the criminal justice system is often so quick in pointing the finger back at the woman?
Yeah, I think this is blatant. Like the victim blaming is blatant. It reeks of misogyny, the deep-rooted misogyny that our culture has. It's been breeding, obviously, for decades, and this is what it is. Like it's so absurd that the chief investigation officer, I mean, he was some higher up in the police department in that region where the crime happened. And it's so absurd that a man of his position would, mull over these details that are so trivial. I mean, your job is to protect your citizens, protect the women in the country, and you have questions like, okay, the same, you should have taken XYZ route, and you should not have gotten out with your kids alone at this hour of the night. These are like outrageous sort of, this is, I don't know, I don't even have the words. We were like speechless about this, and it only just riles you up even more, because this is unforgivable, this is unbelievable that, the police department, whose job is to protect you as citizens of the country, we are all taxpayers, this is our basic right, safety and protection in the country, and one, you fail at providing that protection to your citizen, and then number two, uh, even more like, it's graver to think that they would put the blame on the, they would ask these absurd questions instead of, promising justice, or you ensure that you will ensure that there is accountability, or you will catch the perpetrators. This is the kind of talk that you should be doing. As citizens, we demanded that, he be removed from that position. And then our government is like, no, he did not say anything illegal. Sure, he passed some inappropriate remarks, but nothing illegal there. So he still maintains his position.
Of the perpetrators, one has been caught, and this guy called Abid Ali is known to have had history of such criminal cases against him, and not just any criminal case, but he has been in another gang rape situation, which he has basically walked away scot-free. He was never caught. And this one case, when things got out of hand, when the whole public demanded some sort of a justice, is when they looked into his case history and they realized that this is a serial offender. Now, I wonder what would have happened if there was no such uproar about this case. Would he have just walked scot-free again? Because we know, based on our experience and history, that in most of the cases, rapists just get away with it because there are just so many pending cases, and usually a woman's life or her sexual agency is of no importance to anybody. So, do you think the case would have received this kind of attention, where they turn things around within 72 hours, if there was no such hue and cry?
I highly doubt it. Because this is the fate of most of the rape cases that happen in the country. We can't come out every day on the streets, right? It's practically also impossible for the entire nation to collectively do this on a daily basis, even though these cases are recurring so frequently that it does warrant that, we probably should just stay on the streets and keep screaming, keep yelling until the government, they end up listening to us. But then obviously, because of the nature of this particular incident, the country came out. We took to the streets, and this is really, you're right, this is why the government then they decided to take prompt action, and now the case is up. They've got one person. I mean, and the fact that this guy had already had a very similar or exact same criminal history to his account is our flawed law enforcement system. Complicated power structures and dynamics, the blatant bribery culture that we have. Laws are there, they're in place, but the implementation, there's a big question mark.
Talking about the laws, what are the laws in place for women in Pakistan if they encounter such a thing? What are some unique laws that are specifically providing some sort of safeguard or discourse for women in Pakistan?
Right. So we have some national laws for the protection of women. So we had an Asset Control and Asset Crime Prevention Act for all asset crimes. Then on the offense of rape, we actually do have a criminal law, which is an amendment of a previous law. And it came out as an act in 2016. And the amendments were very rational. So before that, we had the Sharia law, which is the Islamic jurisprudence. And in that, to prove rape, one had to produce 3 witnesses. All right. So that was the only way to, and it is Sharia law, and I don't want to be caught on account of blasphemy, but it is ridiculous. I'm afraid to just say it on record. It is a ridiculous law, and it went on for decades. So the DNA testing and all of that, this any scientific evidence would not be taken into account. So it is very recent. Only in 2016 did they include the DNA evidence as admissible scientific evidence to prove rape. And also, I think in the amendment there's a clause that the investigation needs to happen in the presence of either of at least one female police officer or a female family member of the survivor. So this is in case of a rape survivor. Safeguarding the identity of the survivor. So it's also not allowed to disclose name. That is also something that our very esteemed police officer, the same guy, disclosed, not the name, but they disclosed her citizenship on TV, that she belonged to this XYZ country, and, et cetera, et cetera. So that is also like, it's a violation of the law, and as per the law, this man should be punished. But anyway, and then another law we have is in the offense in the name of honor. So since we have a lot of honor killings, it's also a very common phenomenon in our country and culture. So there's that. And then there's some laws that the Punjab government, so we have the Punjab province put in place. They were for Protection of Women Against Violence Act. It's more broader. And then one specific act was the Protection Against Harassment at Workplaces. So, I mean, we do have like these, much, needed laws in place. But again, the big question comes with the implementation of it. Why do we continue to lack the political will, the resolve, the conviction to put these laws to good use? That is beyond me. And as a citizen, I mean, I don't have a law background. I don't have a social sciences or psychology background. I'm just speaking, as a woman, as a citizen of this country. And the current state of affairs really do disturb me. And I'm really worried about like the future of my kid and his peers. I mean, our generation is a lost cause anyway. I have no hope. This comes off as pessimistic, but I really do not have any hope for the future of like our generation, at least. I hope that with continuous efforts, we might be able to make a slightly better world for the next generation. So I'm kind of just pinning all my hopes on this, little hope there. Yeah.
So when all these protests were going on, I realized that a lot of people had also brought their children along to the streets to protest, and I do know that you yourself did the same too, and you were having pretty bold text written on these placards that you were holding and your son was holding. I'm wondering, did that garner some form of conversation within your family, with your son or with other members, other male members of the family, other female members of the family? What has been going on? Because I know for a fact that as much as we condemn the things that are happening on a national level, it is also very, very important for us to introspect and sort of go into the micro level and try and change things within our homes, as much as it is important to change things in the national level and for that matter in the whole world. What kind of conversations have you been having? Have they been fruitful? What's your experience been like?
Yeah, so I think this happened when, so we had a couple of my younger female cousins who were over during the same time, and so the protest happened last weekend, and my cousins were over, and they're mid-teens. And so I was happy that, it's an opportunity for them. So they have not had very, that kind of exposure. And they come from, reserved families. Their parents, they're more conservative, So I was happy that, they were staying over at our place. And it's a great chance for them to accompany us, my sister, myself, my son. And, because we were obviously already planning to be part of the protest. And we were happy that they would tag along. But unfortunately, one of the cousin's mother called that, no, okay, you're not going to go to the protest, and I'm getting you picked up. And I kind of was, kind of surprised that, why would she not allow her daughters to accompany us. Like we're elders and we're going to be there. So what is going on? And then it was, and I mean, this is in my own family. So I'm sure like there's so many other young girls out there, and their parents, they're minors, so their parents are not allowing them to be part of such, important movements. And I mean, my son, he's turning 5, and he's been going with me to all these protests and all these citizen-led movements that I've been part of since he was since he was in my lap. He was hardly 2 years old. So I've carried him to protests. He's been part of that every time. And yes, it allowed me. It allowed a lot of people. Like I posted it on my public, social media, and it allowed it kind of. It's also it inspired some people. It allowed a gateway for really important conversations. Like people appreciated that it's important. Some people were concerned also that how do you explain such a thing to a child? Like did your child not ask you why are we here? So I was like, of course he did. And I mean, I had to explain to him that so there was this mommy and who got hurt by some really bad men in front of the kids. And so we're going to this protest to ask that these bad men be punished, and we want to support this mommy. So then I had to like contextualize it for him that you have a mommy as well, right? So what will you do if a mommy gets hurt? You're going to be upset, you're going to be angry. So now we're angry because one mommy got hurt. So that's why we go. And he could instantly empathize. He could instantly understand. So obviously you need to be sensitive. You need to handle it sensitively. For you, 4-year-old or 5-year-old, they cannot comprehend all of this. But then this is how you do it. And there was a mother who actually asked on my social media that I can't explain this to my 7-year-old daughter. So how do we go about it? And I mean, these crimes are being committed against kids as young as 4. Vaishnavi, as young as like 3, 4. I can't like fathom what kind of human beings are capable of this. And we're talking about humans right now. And that kind of sends shivers down my spine. Animals, corpses in graves, women, or like, I mean, because it happens to boys, young boys as well. So I'm not just going to say women, but vulnerable people are not safe anywhere. So yeah, if these crimes are being committed against children as young as 3, 4, 5, then we ought to make these conversations with them before it's too late. So yes, my kid at 4 knew what is good and bad touch, where one can and cannot touch, who are the close family members that he can confide in if someone makes him uncomfortable. So he knows all of this. And I give him a refresher every other week. So whenever he's like visiting with his grandparents to somebody else's house, I tell him, what do we know? Who can touch you? Who cannot touch you, and you are not going to sit in anyone's lap, whether or not, like even if it's an uncle or an auntie, and if they're very nice, you can only be with your grandma, grandfather. That's it. So, I mean, he knows the boundaries already. And I mean, it's better that these kids know this at this age than later when they don't even know, what went down.
Yeah. And through the kind of advocacy that you do through the films, through the community that you have created, and through the film festivals that you hold every year, the brilliant ones, do you hope that it would sort of radicalize people into starting to think by centering women when we have these discussions? Because it is a festival, that's a film festival that is unique to women, that is made by women or has women at the center of it. I believe that these are all the avenues where we can have these conversations, and not just on those avenues, but just take that information home with you and then keep having it to people within your family, outside your family, and things. On that note, what can we do really? Because you and I are not very different. Our countries, our laws, our situations are not very different. Men have been men pretty much everywhere in the world, and for developing countries things have not been easy at all. So how do you hope that messages like this sort of go out? What can we do? What can people do? Some sort of a clarion call, if you will. What can we do to mitigate such horrors in the future?
I think we need to keep raising our voice. I mean, social media, we're lucky to be living in this era. See, when we talk about advocacy, social media has given us such a important platform. And then obviously as filmmakers or as film curators, or we have another powerful tool up our sleeve that we can use to make a to reach a wider audience and have conversations with people all around the world. This is also a recent social media post that I put up. I mean, people were questioning the um, functionality of protests. Like, do they work? What is the point of going to protests, or what is the point of raising your voice about anything for that matter, on any platform for that matter? And I think that there's one form of hopelessness, but this kind of hopelessness is just completely like, I don't know what to say to these kind of people, because this is really the only way that we as citizens, as common citizens, have, right? So we're not in any position of power. We're not in the where we could make policies, we could reform or implement policies. So we're not those people, and right? So as common citizens, we need to understand what tools do we have, right? And then we leverage on those tools, and we just make sure that we don't stay silent. We keep yelling and we keep talking until someone somewhere realizes what they're doing, and then they act or they change the way things are. I think the way forward, in my opinion, would be just for us to keep going and keep having these conversations with different kinds of people. I mean, I had these conversations with a lot of my male friends, to understand what mental process they go through, or how do they respond to such incidents. At times we believe that men might not be our allies, or because the misogyny is so deep seated that one way or the other it might have remnants in them, even if they've become, even if they're now educated, they have great exposure and in all of this. But heartwarming to also then hear that that we're not always alone. We could have potentially good allies in men as well, and it is important to bring them to our side. I feel because there's more power in the collective. So from that standpoint, I feel that all of us need to work on this together.
One person has been caught and the other one is still at large, and I hope that they find him, they catch him, and they punish him, and some sort of set a sort of a precedent where it becomes evident that tolerance of any violence against women will be so low that they set an example by punishing him and proving to the world that this is what would happen to you if you dare to be violent against a woman. Doesn't matter what circumstances they are. Circumstances shouldn't matter. A crime is a crime. I mean, what can we do, right? At the tip of every such bad incident, we just somehow try and rummage through the last morsels of hope here and there and pick that up and then keep fighting, and that's all we can do. And I hope that we continue to do that, because there is a lot at stake and there is so much responsibility on our shoulders. And I hope that through this, more people will find it in them to galvanize and stand up for women. I hope that.